Hello, Gail.
Bob,
So, Gail invited me into her office today to talk about what Gail does, and especially what she does for women. She has a coaching practice around assisting women leaders. And so, Gail, why don't you begin by telling me a little bit about your story and what experience are you seeing with women leaders?
thank you, Bob, and thank you for having me. Nice to meet your audience. So, my story, wow, I've been an entrepreneur for a long time, for 19 years, and it's really been interesting that just since COVID, literally since March 12th, I personally have felt really called to do a lot more in terms of speaking up and helping people balance their mental health. And what I'm seeing with women leaders that I work with, partly is concern for their employees, but for themselves, they are stressed and stretched so thin. In the beginning of the pandemic, it was a lot of crisis to bring their employees home, work from home, do a lot of adapting. Now, in my opinion, this stage of the pandemic is almost worse because we're still in limbo, things are on hold. We don't know the future more than normal, not knowing the future. And women are predominantly working from home. These leaders are possibly juggling kids that are still at some, maybe a hybrid version of work, doing their schoolwork in person and at home, or all at home. So what I'm finding is the stress level is high because there's really no escape. There, even weekends, it's still the same. They're still in their house. And it's causing irritability, less creative solutions, and less creative thinking at a time when they really need more creative thinking. They know their employees are struggling with the same thing. They're trying to figure out their way forward. And it impacts productivity to some extent, and mental health, physical health, emotional health. So it's taking its toll.
So what sort of ways are you finding that you can help them?
Well, one of the things that's so interesting is whatever habits we had, and I mean habits of thinking and habits of behavior that we had before the pandemic started, wherever there were some weaknesses in perhaps not setting boundaries, not taking care of ourselves, um, those things are exaggerated now. So what I'm finding is at the root cause of a lot of this stress is not having any alone time.
Mm.
A lot of these women gave up hour and a half commutes, an hour commute, and at first they were thrilled. I can stay in my pajamas, I'm at home. What happened was a lot of them gave up that time and worked more and went from their bed 20 feet to their computer. And then once they open that office door or library or kitchen or wherever they're sitting, it's right back into the family. The same thing is true of back-to-back meetings all day long. It's actually in some ways gotten worse during the pandemic because then you don't even get to ride the elevator or go to a different floor to go visit that other person in their office. You just literally turn off one Zoom and turn on the next. So what I've been helping women leaders realize is how important it is to set some limits and to carve out even 15 minutes to recreate a commute, perhaps. I call it commute time at the end of the day, so that literally they ask their family or their partner or whoever lives with them to hold down the fort while they go around the block or sit outside, or I know it's getting cold in some places in the country, to simply sit, put on a podcast, journal, take a walk, bundle up and take a walk. Something to separate the day, the work day from personal. And also in terms of back-to-back meetings, this is a big one, and I've got some executives trying this. Where you are the host of the meeting, to start scheduling 45-minute meetings, not 60. First of all, people get a lot more efficient when they have less time. Some things can be accomplished in advance, like through an email and some prep. In that extra 15 minutes, everyone will thank you for that 15 minutes to breathe or to debrief the meeting, write down what their next steps are, or just look outside the window at a tree or take some deep breaths. And it makes a huge difference. It can even be 15 minutes to just strategize because there's so little time. So I think that the results I'm seeing are making a real impact, where not only is there that space, but when we take a stand for ourselves, all those inner voices in our head, I call them our board of directors, they thank us. Parts of us that are being ignored thank us, and we can feel so energized. And I know it's counterproductive for some people. Think, well, I need every 15 minutes. I need every minute. I need more time in my day. By taking the break, we're actually more productive. Ideas come to us quicker, and we let out that steam, that pressure.
So I'm curious about where the husbands are in this environment. You're speaking of what women experience, and I'm conscious of how focused men in the family can be on their own careers. Are you finding women? Are you giving women ways of asking for help from their partners? What are you finding?
Well, that's an interesting. I see two topics there. One is what the men are volunteering, and the other is how well women are asking, whether the opening is there or not. So I'm thinking some of my experiences with women who are the major breadwinner and mom and taking care of the kids. They're not all married to men. Some are married to women, but it's about partners. And I think I would generalize that most of the partners are agreeable if asked. They may not be volunteering, and they may not even know that there's a need. Like, it looks like you're taking care of it all. You're fine. And I like to encourage women and men not to rely on being rescued, but to remember that they get to ask for what they need. They might hear no, or maybe they'll compromise. I'd like you to do these 6 things. And the person responds, well, I can do one of them. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting how women are, I think, genetically to some extent, but we're socialized and nurtured to be nurturing and to put other people first. And so classically, I see that women will take on more than they can handle and just keep taking it on, because that's what their commitment feels like. And it really requires stopping and thinking. Here's an interesting nugget. Sometimes this is about asking for help on something that you absolutely can do. It's asking so you can be freed up to do other things, even if it's to sit and relax.
Right. Good. I think the husbands need to be reminded that they have a role here, but we're often sitting quietly, assuming that things are being taken care of because we've.
Do you find that true in your male counterparts?
I think so. I've detected it in my coaching relationships with women whose husbands are working and they are not. So they've set their professions aside during COVID to take care of the children, and I've seen the stress it creates. Just because the woman in the family becomes overwhelmed and unable to feel permission to ask for help.
Interesting. Yeah, it is an interesting thing about permission. We can grant it to ourselves. We do feel better when it's offered, but it's an interesting thing to say that I need this. And without exception, when my clients have asked, they're met with a lot of support. Of course. So I didn't realize you needed that. Or I can't think of any cases where it wasn't supported.
Well, so here's a question from a man's perspective. What would you tell the husbands of these women that, in terms of comfort, that they can offer their spouses?
Tell me what you mean by comfort.
Well, I have a client who was deeply stressed. We're describing she is the proverbial I can do it all or I must do it all.
Okay.
And I suggested that she needed comfort and just being held. Had she recently asked her husband to hold her and give her physical comfort.
Oh,
And that was a revelation to her insofar as she said, you know what? I hadn't realized how long it's been since I've simply been held by my husband. I thought that was
interesting.
it was a great revelation to her that she could have permission to do that, to ask for that.
Interesting. I have to tell you that that hasn't come up, and I'm thinking about my own life, and it happens with regularity. I'm glad to say that I get held. I think, when I'm thinking a lot in our conversation about stress, not necessarily pain or fear, more extreme emotions that need comfort. So when I think of stress, I don't necessarily think of comfort. I look at release, letting go, setting limits, and doing less. So it might be asking for support. I would use the word support possibly, which can be comforting. And that can be asking for specific help. I need extra help, and describing exactly what that looks like. It also can be, can you partner with me? And maybe it's even accountability. I want to check in because you know what? I want to start turning my computer off at 9 p.m. or I want to turn it off at 8 p.m. And I'm going to do my best. And you can even come up with the language, and maybe your husband just jokingly comes in and waves a white flag at 8:59 just to say, or to say, I'm waiting for you on the couch.
Mm-hmm.
And to ask for support in limiting how much they work. Let's go take a walk together. It's been, and you've just had a day of back-to-back meetings. It can even just be asking, what do you need?
Mm-hmm.
What do you need? How can I support you right now? What do you need right now?
Yeah, just the ability to have power to sort of reclaim the power to ask for something and create the next moment for herself can help a woman or help anyone
I think there's a,
deal
I
with
think
this
there's,
stress.
well, I think what I was going to add is I think there's a fear of sounding selfish.
Mm-hmm.
And that I often think about that word, like I could say that my hair is reddish. Ish is of the self. Selfish is of the self. And it's gotten a bad rap, that word. And it is good to focus on self. It is good to put self first, at least for 15 minutes, if not more during a day. And that's where I think the way it will look, what others will think, is sometimes an influence on asking.
I think it's often an image or a fantasy in the mind of the person who feels that way, not in the experience of the people around that are observing it.
Yes. Yeah.
It's really noticeable.
In the psychological world, that's referred to as a projection. And my favorite way of thinking about projections is that in our own head, now I'm going back a ways to where movies were reel to reel, actual film around a tape. But we have a story playing in our heads, and then we open our eyes and we play that movie on the other person's face. And we're sure that that's what they're experiencing too, that story in our head is absolutely, we just play it, we project it with a projector on their face, and we're positive that's what they're thinking.
Right.
I love it.
Well, Gail, thanks very much. So what if anyone is listening and wants additional help, what would they do? How would they reach you?
Well, in the post, you're going to see my email address and my phone number. Please contact me. I am happy to set aside an hour-long complimentary call for two things. One is to look at how I might be of help to you individually, and also how I might be helpful to your employees. This piece of setting boundaries and setting limits and breaking some of these habits is in a workshop that I've been delivering with really great success. So I'm happy to see what can we do together. So please either call or email, and I'd be happy to talk to you.
Great, great. And you'll have your contact information somewhere in the post.
Yeah, we'll put it in the post. And also, my website is www.inspiredchoice.com. And I'm so thrilled, Bob, that you took time to be with me today. These are my favorite topics to talk about. And it's so great to get to talk to those that are in your network.
Thank you very much, Gail. Great to see you again.
Yes. Talk to you soon, Bob. Bye.